Recovery is possible.
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 Recovery dialogues and sober stories.
Hey friends, Antonio Matta here, and this is a special episode. This is not a regular Tuesday drop. This is not a scheduled interview. This is something I needed to say out loud before May runs out. Because May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and I've been sitting with something that doesn't fit on a graphic, doesn't fit in a hashtag, doesn't get said at the ribbon ceremonies. And I figure, if not me, then who? If not now, then when? So, welcome to a special bonus episode of Recovery Dialogues and Sober Stories. This one's called Why Mental Health Awareness Month Isn't Enough. I'm glad you're here. Stay with me. Before I get into the data, before I get into the numbers and the research and what the studies say, I want to share something with you that happened this week. I'm working on a spoken word album. It's drawn from the poems inside my book, Love is in the Eye of the Beholder, the Definitive Redux, 2nd edition. 26 spoken word poems woven through 14 chapters of narrative prose. This week, I sat down to record one of them, and I broke down in tears. Not because I was performing, because I remembered. The poem is called Maybe I Deserve It. I wrote it years ago. Many therapists, many hospital stays, many medication regimens, and many seasons ago. I want you to hear it now, because it is the truest thing I can say before I say anything else. Maybe I deserve it. Maybe I deserve it. Misfortune. Waiting for the other shoe to drop. Why should I expect anything else? Doomed since the Genesis. Cursed to live out my days in misery. The silver-lined clouds above me are tarnished. Hardship loiters around the corner. It waits patiently for me. I'm all alone and vulnerable. Then, thuggishly disrupting the calm, it attacks viciously, ravishing me like a hunter's game. Pride ripped apart, ego bruised, spirit stabbed. What it doesn't know is that I'm already broken. Damaged goods. It tears down, even more someone tore apart. Then it leaves, but leaves a mess. I'm left to bleed out hope, left in agony, feeling not in the least worthy of a touch from grace. That poem lived in me for years before I wrote it. It was my private language for something I did not have public words for yet. And what I know, what I carry with me every time I share it, is that someone listening right now is living inside that poem today. suffering in silence, convinced the darkness is permanent, convinced they deserve it. You don't. I need you to hear that clearly. You don't deserve it. And I'm going to spend the rest of this episode telling you why I believe that, and what the evidence actually shows about what's getting in the way of people like you and me getting the help we deserve. Let me give you some numbers. Not to overwhelm you, not to bury you in statistics, but because if you've ever thought, maybe it's just me, I want the data to speak to how not alone you actually are. In 2024, an estimated 61.5 million Americans, roughly 1 in 4 adults, experienced some form of mental illness. 1 in 4. That means if you're sitting in a room with 3 other people right now, statistically, one of you is carrying something that deserves professional support. Of those 61.5 million people, nearly 30 million did not receive any mental health treatment. Not because they didn't need it, because they couldn't get it, or didn't believe they deserved it, or were too afraid of what seeking help would cost them, socially, professionally, personally. And for substance use disorders, the treatment gap is even wider. Among individuals classified as needing treatment for a substance use disorder, only about 1 in 5 received services in 2024. More than 4 in 5 went untreated. Here's the number that stays with me the most. The average delay between the onset of mental health symptoms and actually receiving treatment is 11 years. 11 years. I didn't get help until I was 19. My symptoms started before I was 14. You do the math. That gap, those years, cost people relationships, careers, opportunities. Sometimes they cost people their lives. And yet, here we are in May, posting graphics and sharing hashtags and calling it awareness. 81% of Americans now recognize the importance of mental health. 81%. And yet access to mental health services has actually declined, from 50% of adults reporting access in 2025 to 47.4% in 2026. We are more aware than we have ever been, and we are less reached than we need to be. Awareness without access is just noise with better branding. So what's actually getting in the way? People point to cost. People point to access. Not enough providers, not enough beds, not enough hours in the week. And those things are real. 34% of Americans report high financial stress, worrying about money daily or weekly, and that burden is directly cutting into their ability to afford care. But there's something older and deeper than cost. In a global survey across 45 countries, 80% of people with mental health conditions agreed that stigma can be worse than the symptoms of the illness itself. Read that again. The shame is worse than the sickness. The fear of being labeled, of being seen as broken, as dangerous, as weak, keeps more people out of care than any copay ever could. I know this. I know it because my first appointment with a psychiatrist, the doctor told me I had a false sense of reality. That was the whole sentence. No warmth around it, no translation, just a clinical assessment delivered like a weather report. And I left that office more confused than when I walked in, because the language of help didn't reach me where I was. The single most powerful external motivator for people seeking mental health support, cited by nearly half of all respondents in a recent survey, was having someone in their circle openly speaking about and seeking care. Not a billboard, not a hashtag, not a green ribbon. A human voice. Somebody saying, I went through this. I got help. I am still here. That's what moves people. That's what this show is built on. And yet, I want to speak to the providers for a moment, because this is not only a community problem, it is a language problem. The clinical wisdom exists. The frameworks exist. The evidence-based treatments exist. But the language that delivers them sometimes builds a wall instead of opening a door. What I needed someone to say to me at my lowest was not a diagnosis. It was this: what you're feeling makes sense given what you've been through. You're not crazy. You're carrying something real, and you don't have to carry it alone. That's it. That's the sanctuary. Providers, your words are part of the treatment. Use them like it. I want to talk to you now, not as the host, not as the trauma-informed counselor, not as the author of 7 books, but as Antonio. The man who still has hard days, who is not fully recovered, and may never be, who picks up his utility belt every morning the same way a carpenter picks up his tools, not because the work is glamorous, but because the house doesn't build itself. This week, that belt looked like breathing exercises, movement, journaling, a conversation with a trusted friend who gave me permission to not have it all together, who reminded me that every setback is fuel for the crucible, forging a stronger Antonio. That's the work. That's what recovery actually looks like on a Tuesday when nobody's watching. There's someone I communicate with regularly who doesn't believe recovery is possible. All they see is suffering. And I understand that place. I've lived in it. When the core belief is the darkness will last forever, no amount of encouragement lands. Words bounce off. Hope feels like someone else's story. Higher levels of self-stigma are directly linked to slower recovery rates, to disempowerment, increased symptoms, and withdrawal from the very connections that could help. So I observe this person not with frustration, but with empathy. And what I see, objectively, is potential. I see someone who hasn't yet been shown that the locus of control can guide the direction of their life. They feel defeated, and they can't see the other side because nobody they trust has stood on it and called back to them. If I can come out on the other side, anybody can. I'm not saying that as a slogan. I'm saying it as testimony. 30 years after the onset of the "something's not right," I am still here. Still working. Still recording poems that make me cry. Still hosting this show. Still believing that recovery is possible. Not perfect. Not painless. Possible. I want to tell you about Delisa. She is the central character in Love is in the Eye of the Beholder, Definitive Redux 2nd edition. my most recent book release. Delisa was conceived through rape, raised by her mother's rapist's family, people who led her to believe she was worthless. The kind of abuse that left no visible scars. The kind the church smiled around on Sunday morning and hid behind closed doors the rest of the week. She endured a lifetime of wounds, childhood abuse, sexual assault, the suffocating weight of being told she was not worth loving. When the pain became unbearable enough to swallow a bottle of pills, she woke up, not to an ending, to Romeo, a therapist who refused to let her disappear into the story her abusers had written for her. I wrote this as fiction, but I wrote it from a place I know, because some of us need fiction to tell the truest truths. The book moves through 4 thematic movements: the inheritance of wounds, maps of uncharted territory, the archaeology of silence, performed selves, and hidden truths. Because recovery doesn't move in a straight line. It moves the way a life moves: backward, forward, sideways, underground, and sometimes through a poem you can't finish recording without crying. If you have ever questioned your worth, if you have ever searched for hope in the darkest hours, if you have ever wondered whether healing is even possible for someone like you, this book holds space for you. It's available now on Amazon or where books are sold. Verse becomes therapy, language becomes survival, and love, real love, patient and kind and never failing, begins when you decide to stay. The spoken word album, Mapping Love, is coming to all major streaming platforms and digital stores soon. As the soulful cartographer, I perform all of the poetry from the book over drum and bass beats. So let me bring it back to the title of this episode. Why isn't Mental Health Awareness Month enough? Because awareness by itself doesn't open a door. It just lights it up. Last year, more than 5.9 million people worldwide took a mental health screening through Mental Health America's online platform. 78% of U.S. screeners scored positive for moderate to severe symptoms. 78%. Millions of people raising their hand, quietly on a screen, alone at whatever hour, saying something is wrong. And then what? If what comes next is clinical language that makes them feel like a case file, they close the tab. If what comes next is a phone tree that takes 45 minutes before a human being answers, they hang up. We know the average delay is 11 years. We know stigma is often more painful than the condition. We know that having someone in your circle who speaks openly about seeking help is the single most powerful motivator. So what does Awareness Month actually need to become? It needs to become what this show tries to be: a human voice, building a sanctuary, before asking anyone to do the hard work of sitting inside it. It needs peer voices alongside clinical ones. It needs language that reaches someone at 2 a.m., not language written for a brochure that gets read in a waiting room someone was terrified to enter in the first place. It needs people who have been in that room and come out the other side, standing in the light and calling back, "You are not alone. Recovery is possible. Stay." Before I close this episode, I have a few things I want to say to you directly. First, to the people listening who are in it right now, stay. Not because it's easy, not because it gets immediately better, but because you have not yet seen what's on the other side of this season. And I am standing here as evidence that there is another side. Now, I want to talk about the future of this show. Recovery Dialogues and Sober Stories Season 5 is coming, and I'm inviting individuals and organizations to be a part of it. If you are a treatment center, a nonprofit, a mental health practice, a wellness brand, if your mission aligns with the belief that recovery is possible, I want to hear from you. This show reaches people in the middle of the night when they can't sleep. It reaches people in parking lots before they go inside for their first appointment. It reaches people who don't feel reached by anything else. Sponsoring this show means your name and mission land in the ears and hearts of the people who need it most. Reach out. Let's have the conversation. To our community, if this show has meant something to you, if an episode carried you through a hard week, if hearing recovery is possible at the right moment made a difference, I'm asking you to invest in it. Share this episode, leave a review, tell somebody about it. Word of mouth is the most powerful thing a listener can give a show like this. We don't have a network behind us. We have you, and that has always been enough. And finally, something I'm genuinely excited about. If you want to wear your recovery, if you want to carry this mission on your back and your chest out into the world, we have merch, hoodies, tees, and more. Real clothes worn by real people in real recovery. Every piece carries a message, not a slogan, but a truth. That's a testimony you can put on in the morning. Visit recoverydialogues.com, home of our merch shop. Merch with meaning, because recovery deserves to be celebrated. Loudly, in public, on purpose. Mental Health Awareness Month is not enough if it stays on a calendar. It becomes enough when it becomes a conversation, when it becomes a confession, when it becomes a human being looking into a camera or speaking into a microphone and saying, I was there. I am still here, and so can you be. I am not fully recovered. I still have hard days, and I am still building, still recording, still reaching into the utility belt of coping skills and mental tricks, still believing that every person who hears this is worth the reaching. Recovery is possible. Not perfect, not painless. Possible. This has been a special Mental Health Awareness Month bonus episode of Recovery Dialogues and Sober Stories. Season 5 is coming. I'm Antonio Matta. Stay in the work. The work is worth it.
Recovery is possible.
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 Recovery Dialogues and Sober Stories.